The story follows a powerful figure, Donald Trump, as he halts his motorcade to assist a struggling girl, Emma, whose plea for help reveals the plight of forgotten families of veterans set against a backdrop of neglect and systemic failure. The narrative exposes the harsh realities faced by underserved communities, including the enduring struggles of military families and the overlooked sacrifices of marginalized individuals. Trump's intervention ignites a controversial movement that forces attention on these issues, challenging societal indifference and stirring debates over privilege, responsibility, and the racial and economic disparities embedded in America's social fabric. Here's the story. The scorching sun bore down relentlessly on the vibrant streets, where the symphony of honking horns and hurried footsteps wove a chaotic rhythm into the city's pulse. Amid the hustle, a long line of black SUVs and a gleaming Cadillac rolled through the urban expanse, commanding attention wherever it passed. At the helm of this motorcade sat Donald Trump, his sharp eyes scanning a report while one of his aides briefed him on their upcoming engagements. As they approached a crowded intersection, Trump's gaze shifted toward the sidewalk, drawn to an unusual sight. A frail girl, no older than 10, stood in the shade of a crumbling bus stop. Her small hands clutched a piece of cardboard, its uneven letters boldly proclaiming, "Please help us, my family needs a miracle." Her unkempt blonde hair framed a dirt-streaked face, and her oversized hoodie hung limply on her tiny frame. Despite the bustling crowd, her wide green eyes seemed to plead directly at the world beyond her. "Stop the car," Trump said, his tone firm and deliberate. The motorcade lurched to a halt, causing surprised murmurs among passers-by and anxious looks among his security team. "Sir, this is not a secure location," one of the guards objected. Trump dismissed the warning with a wave of his hand. "I want to talk to her now." As he stepped out of the car, his signature presence drew immediate attention. Phones were raised. Whispers grew louder, and a ripple of curiosity spread through the crowd. Undeterred, Trump approached the girl and crouched slightly to meet her gaze, his expression softening. "What's your name, sweetheart?" he asked, his voice unusually gentle. The girl hesitated, clutching the cardboard sign tighter as her eyes darted nervously toward the looming figures of the security detail. My name is Emma," she finally stammered. Trump smiled faintly, his tone remaining calm. "Emma, why are you out here all alone?" Her lip quivered, but she mustered the courage to answer. "My mom, she's really sick, and we don't have a home anymore. My dad died in the war." Her voice broke and tears welled up in her eyes. "I just want to help her. She's all I have left." Trump's expression hardened, though not in anger. His jaw tightened as her words sank in. "Your dad was a soldier?" he asked quietly. "Where did he serve?" Emma nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "In the Middle East, he was a hero." For a moment, Trump was silent, his eyes lingering on the brave little girl who had taken on the impossible burden of saving her family. Finally, he straightened, turning to his entourage. "We're going to see where she lives," he declared. "Now." "Sir, this area is dangerous," one of the bodyguards protested. "It's not safe for you to—" "If a child can stand on the street to save her mother," Trump interrupted, his tone like steel, "I can risk stepping into her world. If anyone feels unsafe, they're welcome to leave." No one dared to argue further. Trump extended a hand to Emma. "Lead the way, Emma. Let's go meet your mom." The convoy crawled through narrow streets, the gleaming skyscrapers and polished storefronts gradually giving way to rows of crumbling buildings and graffiti-strewn walls. Trash littered the alleyways, and the air was heavy with the scent of decay. Inside the Cadillac, Emma sat quietly, her small hands fidgeting in her lap. Hope flickered in her eyes, though her lips remained tightly pressed in apprehension. "That's it," she finally said, pointing to a ramshackle structure wedged at the end of a dim alley. The building looked like it could collapse at any moment, its roof patched with rusted tin sheets and its wooden door held together with makeshift repairs. Trump's expression darkened as he surveyed the scene. When the car stopped, Trump stepped out and motioned for Emma to lead him inside. The security team flanked him cautiously, scanning their surroundings for potential threats. Emma pushed open the door, revealing the interior. A single dimly lit room with peeling walls and sparse furnishings. A frail woman lay on a cot in the corner, her sunken cheeks and hollow eyes telling a story of long suffering. "Mom," Emma said softly, clutching Trump's hand for reassurance. "This is Mr. Trump. He's here to help us." The woman struggled to sit up, her thin frame trembling under the effort. "Mr. Trump?" she murmured, her voice hoarse with disbelief. "Why would someone like you—" Trump stepped forward, kneeling beside her. "Emma brought me here," he said simply, his voice warm but resolute. "Now tell me what happened." With Emma holding her hand, the woman began to speak, her voice frail but steady. My husband, Michael, was a soldier. He died overseas. After that, everything fell apart. I got sick and we lost the house. Now, this is all we have left. Trump surveyed the room, patched up furniture, a small pile of threadbare blankets, and a few worn-out belongings stacked in the corner. The hopelessness was palpable, but it only fueled his resolve. We'll get you the help you need, he said, turning to his advisors. I want her health assessed immediately, and I need a full report on their situation within the hour. Sir, one aide said nervously, we can coordinate aid from your office. It's safer. Trump cut him off sharply. She doesn't need bureaucracy. She needs action. This family fought for our country. We're not leaving until we've done right by them. Emma's mother broke down in tears, clutching her daughter as if the weight of her burdens had finally lifted. Thank you, she whispered. I don't know how to thank you enough. You don't need to, Trump replied firmly. Your husband gave everything for this nation. This is the least we can do. As they stepped outside, a small crowd had gathered, drawn by the unusual sight of the motorcade in such a place. Faces etched with struggle now held glimmers of hope as they watched Trump address his team with urgency. This isn't just one family's story, he said, his voice carrying through the tense silence. This is the story of countless others who've been left behind, that changes today. The hesitant clapping of a few onlookers grew into a wave of applause. For the first time in years, the air in the impoverished neighborhood felt lighter, filled with the spark of possibility. Turning to his advisors, Trump spoke with quiet determination. This isn't where the journey ends, it's where it begins. The afternoon sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the crumbling alleyways. The tension in the air was palpable as Donald Trump stood in the heart of the impoverished community, surrounded by weathered faces and watchful eyes. His security team remained vigilant, their earpieces buzzing with updates. A guard stepped closer, his tone hushed but insistent. Sir, there's a group of young men gathering at the far end of the alley. Their intentions are unclear, but this could escalate quickly. Trump glanced in the direction indicated. The figures stood in the distance, their postures guarded and their faces unreadable. He exhaled deeply, then turned back to his team with unwavering resolve. Do your job and keep everyone safe, he instructed firmly. But I won't leave because of fear. He knelt beside Emma, the little girl whose plea had brought him to this forgotten corner of the city. Placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder, he spoke softly. Emma, show me your neighbors. I need to understand what's happening here. Emma hesitated, her wide eyes flickering with uncertainty. Then she nodded. Okay, she whispered. I'll take you. Trump, Emma, and a few members of his security detail began walking cautiously through the narrow alley. The air was heavy with the scent of mildew and decay, and every step seemed to echo in the stillness. Faces peered out from cracked doorways and broken windows, their gazes a mixture of disbelief and guarded curiosity. A middle-aged man stood in the doorway of a dilapidated house as they approached. His face was deeply lined, his shoulders stooped with the weight of years of hardship. When his eyes landed on Trump, they widened in disbelief. Mr. Trump? He rasped, his voice hoarse from disuse. I can't believe it's really you. Trump nodded, stepping closer. I'm here to understand what's happening, he said. Tell me your story. The man hesitated, his hands trembling slightly as he wiped them on his worn trousers. We're not just poor, sir, he said, his voice thick with emotion. We've been abandoned, forgotten. No one cares about us. Trump's expression darkened as he listened, his eyes scanning the surrounding homes, many of which were on the verge of collapse. Go on, he urged. The man continued, his tone a mix of frustration and despair. Most of us here, we're families of soldiers, people who served this country. My wife's brother, he died overseas, and what did we get in return? Nothing. My son had to drop out of school because we couldn't afford the tuition. We scrape by on whatever we can find, but it's never enough. Trump's gaze shifted to the children playing in the dirt nearby, their laughter tinged with innocence that belied their harsh reality. Adults lingered in doorways, their faces etched with exhaustion and quiet resignation. Turning to one of his advisors, Trump's voice cut through the silence like a blade. I want a full report on every family in this community, their needs, their struggles, and I want it on my desk by tomorrow morning. Sir, the advisor began cautiously, we could collaborate with local organizations to... They've waited long enough, Trump interrupted sharply. If Emma can stand on a street corner begging for help, then we have no excuse not to act immediately. The advisor nodded reluctantly, stepping aside to make notes. Trump returned his attention to Emma, his expression softening slightly. Let's go back to your house, he said. I have something to say. By the time they returned, The crowd outside had grown significantly. Word of Trump's presence had spread, and more residents had gathered, their faces marked by a cautious mixture of hope and disbelief. Trump ascended the creaking steps of Emma's home and turned to face the assembly. "No family," he began, his voice carrying across the hushed alley, "especially the family of someone who gave their life for this country, should have to live like this." His words hung in the air, heavy with conviction. "You've been forgotten," he continued, "but that ends today, I promise you. Not only will I help Emma and her mother, but I will help every single one of you together. We will change this." The silence broke as a smattering of applause rippled through the crowd. It grew, tentative at first, then louder as more people joined in. Tears glistened in the eyes of some, and for the first time in years, a flicker of hope illuminated their faces. Trump knelt beside Emma once more, taking her small hand in his. "Thank you for being so brave," he said, his tone softer but no less resolute. "You've done more than help your mom. You've helped this entire community, I promise you. I won't let you down." As he climbed into the waiting Cadillac, he paused before closing the door. Turning to his lead security officer, he spoke with quiet intensity. "From this moment on, this is my top priority. I want every resource mobilized immediately, and I'll personally oversee every step of this initiative." The motorcade began to move, its pace slow and deliberate as it exited the slum. Behind it, the crowd lingered, their eyes fixed on the departing figure of the man who had just rekindled their hope. For Trump, this was not the end. It was the beginning of a mission far greater than himself. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the city in golden hues, his mind churned with plans for the road ahead. The spark he had ignited in this forgotten alley would grow into a beacon of change, not just for Emma and her mother, but for countless others like them. Within days of Trump's visit to Emma's neighborhood, the world learned about the little girl who had stood on a street corner clutching a sign and sparked a movement of video of Trump halting his motorcade to speak with Emma, and walking through the dilapidated streets with her hand in his went viral, resonating with millions. Social media erupted with the hashtag #Voices Unheard, as users shared Emma's story alongside their own tales of struggle and resilience. Comments flooded in, many expressing their outrage at the forgotten sacrifices of veterans' families, while others pledged to take action. "She's not just a little girl," one tweet read. "Emma represents every child who's been left behind. We can't turn our backs anymore." A movement is born. The story ignited a groundswell of support across the nation. Trump's declaration in the slum wasn't just a promise. It became the foundation for a full-scale initiative, United Front for Families. This campaign, spearheaded by Trump, sought to tackle the challenges faced by veteran families and communities left in the shadows. What began as an act of compassion for Emma and her mother grew into a powerful national movement. Corporate backing major corporations quickly stepped up. Tech giants like Microsoft and Google pledged millions of dollars to fund housing programs for veteran families, while retailers like Target and Costco announced long-term partnerships to provide essential goods. The private sector mobilized like never before, with businesses small and large uniting under a common cause. Grassroots engagement. The movement wasn't confined to boardrooms or corporate press releases. Across the country, individuals and communities took action. A teacher in Montana donated her entire savings to help a struggling veteran family buy school supplies. High school students in New York launched a statewide clothing drive, collecting thousands of items for children in underserved communities. A retired mechanic in Indiana, inspired by Emma's courage, began offering free repairs to vehicles belonging to veteran families. "I may not have much," the mechanic said during a local news interview, "but if Emma can stand in front of a crowd and ask for help, the least I can do is lend a hand." Emma and her mother, a symbol of hope. As the initiative gained momentum, Emma and her mother found themselves at the center of national attention. Invited to share their story on several high-profile talk shows, they spoke of their hardships and expressed gratitude for the outpouring of support. "I used to think we were invisible," Emma's mother said during one particularly emotional interview, "but now I see that we were never alone. We just needed someone to shine a light on us." The mother-daughter duo inspired countless others, becoming the faces of a movement rooted in compassion and action. The White House event. To celebrate the progress made by the United Front for Families, Trump hosted a special event at the White House. The gathering brought together veteran families, corporate donors, nonprofit leaders, and everyday citizens who had contributed to the campaign. The East Lawn was transformed into a vibrant space filled with laughter, music, and the shared sense of purpose that had emerged from Emma's story. Taking the stage, Trump addressed the audience with his trademark confidence, but his words carried a sincerity that captivated everyone. "Emma's bravery reminded us of our responsibility to those who have given everything for this country," he began, his voice strong but filled with emotion. "Her story is not just about one little girl or one family. It's about thousands who've been overlooked, ignored, and left behind. The crowd fell silent as Trump continued. Today we honor our veterans and their families, but we also make a promise we will not let their struggles fade into silence. Together we will build a nation where no one is forgotten and no one is left behind. Cheers erupted as the audience rose to its feet, their applause a resounding affirmation of the movement's mission, a pledge for the future. The event also featured personal stories from veteran families who had benefited from the initiative. One young widow recounted how the campaign had saved her home and allowed her children to stay in school. A Vietnam veteran shared how the program had provided him with access to health care he had struggled to afford for decades. Each story painted a picture of resilience and the transformative power of community. As the event drew to a close, Trump made one final plea. Each of us can make a difference, no matter how small, whether it's a donation, volunteering your time, or simply listening to someone who feels forgotten. We all have a role to play together. Let's create an America where every voice is heard. A ripple effect. The impact of Emma's courage and Trump's commitment spread far beyond the borders of the United States. News outlets from around the world picked up the story, shining a light on veteran struggles in other nations. Inspired by the United Front for Families, similar initiatives began forming globally, proving that one small voice could indeed spark a revolution. For Trump, this was not a fleeting campaign or a political gesture. It was the beginning of a legacy, a mission to uplift the forgotten and give them the tools to reclaim their futures. And for Emma, her courage had turned her into a symbol of hope, proving that even the smallest acts of bravery could inspire monumental change. As the night fell over the White House, the illuminated lawn buzzed with the energy of a movement just beginning to take shape, and somewhere in a once-forgotten alley, the spark of hope that Emma had ignited continued to burn, brighter than ever before. Emma and her mother stood quietly at the edge of the stage, the grandeur of the moment reflected in the sea of faces before them. Emma, wearing a simple white dress that symbolized innocence and hope, clutched her mother's hand tightly. Her mother gave her an encouraging nod, and after a moment's hesitation, Emma stepped forward to speak. Her voice, though small and slightly shaky, carried a profound weight. "I never thought holding a piece of cardboard would change anything," she began, her words sincere and unfiltered. "All I wanted was to save my mom, but now I see that when we have the courage to speak up, even if we're scared, we can change the world." The audience, already moved by the unveiling of the memorial moments earlier, erupted into thunderous applause. Tears streamed down the faces of many as they watched the little girl who had become the symbol of a movement stand bravely before them. Trump, standing a few steps behind, smiled warmly at Emma as she finished her speech. The applause swelled again as she stepped back, taking her mother's hand. Her simple words captured the spirit of the United Front for Families, the campaign born from her courage and Trump's determination. A movement's ripple effect. What had started with Emma's plea on a busy street corner had grown into a national call to action. The United Front for Families initiative had expanded far beyond its original mission, reaching underserved communities across the country. Programs modeled after the movement were launched in multiple states, offering practical aid for those in need. Housing first initiatives. New shelters and affordable housing developments were built, providing stability for families who had been displaced. Education support programs, grants and scholarships ensured children from veteran families could stay in school and pursue higher education. Job training and placement. Workforce development centers provided training for unemployed parents, opening doors to sustainable careers. A news anchor captured the moment during a televised segment. "This is not just a campaign, it's a revival of humanity's greatest qualities: compassion, responsibility, and unity." A national memorial for fallen heroes. Months after the movement's inception, a monumental event brought the nation together once again. On a sunny morning at the National Mall, Trump presided over the dedication of a new memorial honoring fallen veterans and their families. The memorial's design was striking, a bronze statue of a kneeling soldier holding the hand of a young girl, her face lifted in hope. Beneath the statue, the inscription read, "They gave everything. It is our duty to ensure they are never forgotten." The crowd, gathered from all walks of life, fell silent as Trump stepped to the podium. His voice, steady and filled with emotion, carried across the expanse. "Today, we dedicate this memorial not just as a tribute to sacrifice, but as a promise," he said. "A promise that no family who has given so much for this country will be left to suffer in silence. Emma taught me a lesson I'll never forget, that courage knows no age, and even the smallest spark of hope can light up the darkest corners." Thunderous applause erupted once more as he stepped back. Then, with a warm gesture, he invited Emma to speak again. Emma's final words. Emma approached the microphone, her small frame almost dwarfed by the immense crowd before her. Her eyes, filled with determination, scanned the faces before she began. "I'm just a little girl," she said, her voice growing stronger with each word. "All I wanted was to save my mom. But because of Mr. Trump and all of you, I've learned something important. Even the smallest actions can make a big difference. Thank you for helping my mom and me, and for helping so many other families like ours." Her heartfelt words resonated deeply, bringing the crowd to its feet in a wave of applause and cheers. Tears flowed freely as the memorial's unveiling became a powerful reminder of what humanity could achieve when united. A legacy of action. The memorial became more than just a monument. It was a symbol of change. Inspired by its unveiling, community-driven initiatives sprang up nationwide. Students in Michigan organized care packages for veterans' families. Retirees in Florida donated their time to teach job skills to struggling parents. Local businesses in Kansas partnered to offer free meals to military families. Trump, true to his word, continued to oversee the movement personally. He attended events, met with families, and pushed for additional funding to expand the initiative's reach. One journalist summed it up eloquently: "This isn't just a story of one man's compassion. It's a story about how a young girl with nothing but a piece of cardboard and a dream inspired an entire nation." A call to action. The story of Emma and her mother transcended borders, spreading globally as a beacon of hope. Videos of Emma's speeches and Trump's visits were shared millions of times, inspiring others to take action in their own communities. From small villages to bustling cities, people began to believe that even their smallest contributions could create ripples of change. As the sun set on the day of the memorial's dedication, the movement's message remained clear. Unity and compassion could create miracles, even from the simplest of beginnings. The story ended with a heartfelt call to action, urging viewers to join the effort. "If this story touched your heart," the narrator said, "share it with someone you love, donate, volunteer, or simply lend a listening ear to those in need. Every act of kindness matters." As the final scene faded, a simple message appeared: "Hope begins with you."